This hour, we're joined by Michael Rubin, Director of Policy Analysis for the Middle East Forum, also a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, teaches classes on terrorism for the FBI and also on security, politics, and religion and history of the U.S. and NATO. Michael, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian.
Michael, first off, are you concerned at all about the sleeper cells? We learned President was warned by that directly at the G7 that the Iranians have sleeper cells in our country. We see there hundreds came across during the Biden years. What do you hear?
Yes, I'm very, very concerned about it. First, big picture, Brian. Look at how creatively Ukraine attacked into Russia, Israel attacked into Iran. Do we really expect that our adversaries haven't put such plans in place to attack us? The next Pearl Harbor isn't going to come over the horizon. It's going to come from within the United States. But we know already that there have been sleeper cells here. In 2006, there was an astute bartender down in Arkansas who noticed that an Iranian-American member of the Arkansas National Guard was asking way too many questions. He alerted the FBI, and it turned out, upon investigation, that this person had been a member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, but lied on their immigration application. We ended up going after him in immigration court. But the fact of the matter is, we've seen that. We've seen the Iranians work with Mexican cartels and Azerbaijani mafia. The sleeper cells are here.
Yeah, they are. And it's just amazing why they would surge our border by the hundreds and now get up to 1,500 in 4 years. Do you think they saw the vulnerability there? Because you had an administration who was actually friendly to Iran, begging for a new deal.
Well, yes, they certainly did see the vulnerability there. But Brian, it goes beyond that. Whenever any Iranian American goes back to Iran to visit family, they get interrogated at the airport. Whether they know it or not, their computers, their phones are sucked dry. What's the likelihood that some of these people have had things on their phones or computers that make them subject to blackmail? And ultimately, that's how espionage works. Some people do it because they're ideologically motivated. Some people do it because they want money, and other people do it for to try to avoid embarrassment. The Iranians are all very sophisticated about this, but Donald Trump is also really smart, Brian, because by talking about this publicly, he's going to create panic among some of these cells. They're going to try to call their handlers. They're going to try to move. And that gives the FBI greater opportunity to try to smoke them out and intercept them.
You're the expert, but Michael, you know what would go a long way? To let them know, if there's a terror attack here from an Iranian surrogate or a sleeper cell, that is like an attack on our homeland. And you let Mr. Ayatollah hiding in some bunker somewhere outside Tehran, that's like going after us. That's like going after us anywhere, anytime, and we're going to go after them again hard.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Brian. The only thing I would expand on that is if a hair of any American's head is harmed anywhere in the world, if you go after diplomats in Bangkok or tourists in Bulgaria, then we are coming after you hard. I mean, the great thing about Donald Trump's attack on the Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear power plants, whether you agreed with him or not, is that he has restored American deterrence. Even the Chinese are now recognizing that the Americans are no longer the paper tiger they thought we were. If anyone now or in the future touches America, they have to consider, when they do their cost-benefit analysis as they plan their terrorism, that we could come after them much in the same way that Donald Trump destroyed a 20-year project of the Islamic Republic. And remember, for all the Iranians talk about wanting to enrich uranium for their nuclear power station at Bushehr, they haven't put any of their enriched uranium in that nuclear power station. That's a big tell that they've been lying all along.
So, Michael, were you one of the people that said it is worth it to take out these sites prior to the hit, even without the ceasefire that resulted in it?
Yes, I absolutely do think it was wise. Look, Brian, I understand that some people, for constitutional reasons, or perhaps out of animus towards Israel, don't want the United States getting involved. They don't think it will make America great again. But if there's a calculation, if we have a choice, you can show your animosity to Israel, your spite, and stand down because Israel has according to some narratives, started something they needed the United States to finish. That's one choice. The other question is whether doing that is actually in the security interests of the United States if Iran could reconstitute its program. A quick analogy. When you have a hornet's nest, you have two good options. One is to leave it alone. The other option is to get rid of it. But the worst possible outcome is to lightly stand underneath it, lightly tapping it with a stick. What Donald Trump did was ensure that that wasn't what we ended up having to do with a swarm of hornets around us.
Michael, the way they profile is they only understand strength and a willingness to use it. It's not so much a big, if you are hesitant to attack, they're going to take advantage of you. That's the only thing the Iranians seem to understand, and many other terror groups seem to understand. I want you to hear what Lindsey Graham said. As happy as he is with ceasefire, and I feel the same way, he's got to hear some other things. Cut 22.
Here's my question. The Iranian foreign minister said at 4 o'clock Mideast time, they would no longer attack Israel if Israel doesn't attack them. That's not enough for me. What I want him to say tomorrow morning is not only will we not attack Israel in the future, we recognize Israel as a legitimate member of the Mideast, a sovereign nation entitled to live in peace, and we no longer will try to destroy the state of Israel. We've changed our policy when it comes to Israel.
We're not close to those things, are we?
No, we're not. That worries me. And we shouldn't, I mean, Lindsey Graham is right here. He's seeing the big picture. There's absolutely no historical reason for Iran's enmity toward Israel. And we know that the reason why Iran has its missile and nuclear program was to target Israel. We know this because when the father of Iran's missile program was killed in 2011 in Persian in the newspapers, and this wasn't reported in the United States, he said he wanted his epitaph to read, "The man who enabled Israel's destruction." But what worries me more, and I see as an intelligence failure, perhaps on par with that which surrounded Iraq, is we need to know where the enriched uranium is. If we lost track of it, we need to understand how we did that, because God forbid that falls into the wrong hands, that falls into terrorist hands. We can't simply talk about whether Iran can construct a nuclear bomb as we would. The perfect can't be the enemy of the good. If they have the ability to make a dirty bomb, that's dangerous if we don't know where that enriched uranium is.
Just looking through the Middle East right now, the president seems to have made good progress with Qatar. I know they have a nation with two faces. They also have to exist in a very dangerous neighborhood. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain has always been good. Jordan and Egypt. Where do you stand with the president's decision to lift sanctions from Syria?
You know, just because you shave your beard and put on a business suit doesn't make you any more Al-Qaeda than you were. A reformed Al-Qaeda uses a sharp knife, not a blunt knife. But what worries me is this. Al-Jilani is not fully in charge of Syria. He controls about 40% of the country. My colleague at the Middle East Forum, Jonathan Spire, drove across Syria and for more than 100 miles didn't see a single checkpoint of Al-Jilani's forces. We know that when he took over Syria, he had 35,000 to 40,000 men, not enough to run a country. And not all of them were so-called reformers. Now he's had to recruit so many more, many of which aren't anywhere close to reform. I'm worried that he's going to start playing a game of good cop, bad cop, saying, hey, look, I've reformed. You can't trust these rogue guys, but with a nod and a wink, he's giving them the green light.
But so, Michael, this is one thing I can say. I love that he's kicking out Russia, and I love that he locked out Iran. That helps.
That absolutely does. But what I worry about, as all of Iran's proxy terrorist groups are orphaned, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Iraqi militias have sat in their barracks largely out of fear of what the United States might do. Even the Houthis might be cut off. What I'm worried about is that Turkey or Pakistan might decide to throw these resistance groups a lifeline.
Good point. What do you think it happens to Iraq now? I mean, they have not had a chance to exist without being, as they've got rid of Saddam, thanks to us, without being under the thumb of the Iranians. Do you think Iran releases that grip? Because there's nothing the Iraqis and Iranians don't get along. I mean, they're just basically, Iran's got the power. They got Shia. They have a Shia population. So they saw I guess, a relationship of convenience. But in the Iraqi world, they don't want to have Iran all over their government.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. As you know, I go back and forth to Iraq quite often. Most Americans are locked in their imagery of Iraq from the Iraq War. When I talk to Iraqis, their biggest complaint about Iran is these bastards keep dumping cheap manufactured goods on us and undercutting our economy. It's a completely different discussion. The fact of the matter is, however, Iraqis have always been nationalists. They've always wanted the Americans to balance out the Iranians so they can have space to develop. If Iran is weaker, it means they're not going to want the United States there as much. And that's a good thing so that they can build and consolidate their own system, their own control.
So you're saying that what is your theory on why they have not done anything? You know, rocketing our bases or tried to even create some unrest. Is it because Iran's come off so weak they don't want to be part of this? They want to separate themselves from the Iranians?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's not
the
just
militias, I mean, not the government, but the militias, Michael.
Yeah. I've had long conversations with the Iraqis about this. First of all, the government has slowly been getting stronger. They're able to assert force. The Iraqis are exhausted by war. They want to grow their economy. I mean, more than half the Iraqis were born after the 2003 war. They want to be Dubai. They don't want to be the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as elections are coming up in October in Iraq, basically the politicians are responding to this groundswell, this new attitude from the youthful Iraqi people.
Yeah, I guess there's a little bit of hope there. We took our eye off the Iraq ball. People are fatigued by it. I understand it. But it all could be coming together in a more positive way where they actually have elections and not explosions. And, you know, who knows how this thing is going to end up. And lastly, the President of the United States is going over to NATO. And he's going to be meeting personally in a bigger setting. What should his message be to NATO now about the Russian threat?
He needs to be consistent about the Russian threat. He should say, look, it was important to try diplomacy. Vladimir Putin didn't respond. And what makes Donald Trump different from his predecessors is he does see the forest through the trees. He doesn't get bogged down in process. And he should tell NATO, I'm willing to work with you. The other thing he needs to talk to NATO about, he needs to be consistent. NATO is able to do the 3% of its GDP towards defense, but you can't keep shifting the goalposts, starting to talk about 5 and so forth. That's going to lead the NATO members to sort of walk away, to splinter the coalition, and Russia will take advantage of that.
Yeah, we're not at 5. We're at 3.7 or something like that. We're third. So the fact is that 22 of 22 nations are pending 2, and it looks like Germany is starting to realize they have to defend themselves. They're even talking about having a draft in Germany.
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. This is important. The Russian threat is grave and growing. People need to understand the problem with many of these rogue regimes isn't the grievance. It's not anything Ukraine did or did not. It's ideology. And that's much harder to tackle. We've got to stop fooling ourselves that there's some sort of diplomatic magic formula. At the very least, we need to be prepared for the worst possible outcome in the hope that we can avoid it.
2 quick topics. The U.S. can't be blind to China's aggression against India. I have not noticed that. I know they didn't get along. Are they beginning to amp up their anger towards each other?
China is amping up its anger towards India. It's doing what we call salami slicing, little by little tackling this. But remember, for all we talk and worry about China, China is the only country in the world that has an army made up of only children. India, every Indian soldier has on average 3 or 4 brothers and sisters. And so for all of China's bluster, there's an open question about whether they really can go into a major war, given that the elites of Beijing and Shanghai don't want to lose their sons.
Wow. I've never thought about that. That's really interesting. And also you believe, even though Erdogan and President Trump have a great relationship, Turkey is a country to keep your eye on. What do you worry about there?
Look, the statistic that most defines Turkey to me comes from Turkey's own interior ministry. Since Recep Tayyip Erdogan came to power, the murder rate of women inside Turkey has increased 1,400%. And that's a result of the sense of impunity that the religious conservatives have. We see that Erdogan is becoming, in effect, a state sponsor of terror. The only difference between him and others is that he has the shield of NATO to hide behind that makes him immune to consequence.
All right. Thanks so much. Michael Rubin, thanks for bringing us through the trouble
Thank you,
spots of
Brian.
this world. Ahmed, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
So do you think a ceasefire is the right move?
I think for the time being, it's good to take stock and inventory of what's been done. I do worry about these being tactical victories, tactical achievements with nothing strategic on the horizon. You know, Iran may still have those stockpiles of enriched uranium. They may still have some of their ballistic missiles that are particularly menacing, not just to the Israeli people, but to the Middle Eastern and Arab people. And certainly we still have the regime relatively intact. And so it remains to be seen as to how what Israel did militarily can be translated into political victories.
Right. Here is what J.D. Vance said. Cut 5.
We were actually working on that just as I left the White House to come over here. So that's good news that the president was able to get that across the finish line. I think what it means, Brett, is quite simple. First of all, the president, without, knock on wood, having a single American casualty, obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. We are now in a place where we weren't a week ago. A week ago, Iran was very close to having a nuclear weapon. Now, Iran is incapable of building a nuclear weapon with the equipment they have because we destroyed it. So that's a very, very big thing. Now, what that means, I think, is we have to talk to Iran and, of course, to Israel about what the future holds. Because while we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, our hope and our expectation is that they're not going to try to rebuild that program.
And the problem is, too, the money floods over to Hamas, makes them more powerful. They suppress the Palestinian people, any hope of any type of representative government. And they continue to fund Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels. And wherever they can, try the best they can to destroy Israel. So in that case, Ahmed, nothing's changed.
Well, that's the concern, right? There will never be a safe and an independent state of Palestine that is demilitarized, that is focused on nation building, that is focused on economic and political prosperity for the Palestinian people, while the Islamic Republic of Iran exists in its current shape and format. They have been meddling in the Palestinian issue for really the entirety of the regime's existence. In the 1990s, during the Oslo peace process, they helped militarize the Second Intifada. They supported Hamas in turning Gaza into a so-called resistance base from which billions of dollars were wasted into thin air. And so, yes, I have immense concern that 21 months into the devastating war following October 7th, we're still really in a stalemate.
Ahmed, now there's talks being reinvigorated with the U.S., Israel, and Hamas. I believe they're going to be Egypt offered, but it looks like it's going to be in Qatar. What have you heard?
Well, it looks like there's a desire to leverage the ceasefire between Israel and Iran right now into an opportunity to end the war in Gaza, and to do so in a way that not only allows for the return of Israeli hostages, for the end of the horrendous suffering of the Palestinian civilians in Gaza, the starvation, the death, the killing, the maiming, but also in a way that maybe breaks Hamas's monopoly on power, in a way that maybe introduces the beginning of what could be an alternative to their solitary grip on power. And it looks like the Egyptians, perhaps with Qatari help, after all, the Qataris were involved allegedly heavily in brokering the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. So if the totality of those threads come together, there could actually be hope for the Palestinian people in Gaza and certainly for the remaining hostages. The question is, can Hamas be pressured into giving up power in Gaza, even if that happens in phases? That has to be on the table, because a ceasefire that brings us back to where we were before October 7th is not only bad for Israelis, it is disastrous for the Palestinian people.
Ahmed Fouad Alkhatib joins us now. He is he's leading Realign for Palestine and Atlantic Council Project. Wants to take a new approach to this. So tell me, what's your vision? What's your vision that you think is plausible and feasible for Gaza and maybe portions of the West Bank?
Well, certainly the principles that Realign for Palestine deploys and adopts is a wholesale rejection of violence as a political strategy that has failed the Palestinian people for decades, time and again. Violence is immoral, it's ineffective. Then there's the embrace of multiple truths, multiple realities at once. Palestinian freedom and self-determination and independence can and should happen, but it can also happen in alignment with Israeli and Jewish safety and security. These do not have to be in mutual opposition. There is space and capacity for the realization of both people's aspiration without them being in perpetual opposition. Then there is radical pragmatism, and that is going for what is achievable, going for what is doable, what is actually tangible. The sloganeering, globalize the intifada from the river to the sea, maximalism, a sloganeering around the armed resistance narrative. Not only are they ineffective, they've pushed away prospective allies and partners. I believe that reimagining peace and coexistence as courageous evolutions is the only pathway forward to actually save what remains of the Palestinian people. And that's not kumbaya. That's not just, oh, let's hold hands and everything can be fine. That's actually pragmatic policy that can get us out of this dark time. And I think we have a unique opportunity with President Trump, who has signaled serious willingness to act as a bridge builder, as a peacemaker. And so the totality of that vision, I think, can inform better advocacy, better activism.
But Ahmed, you sound great. I love it. And that's exactly the type of situation that'll work. But who is behind, who have you convinced to follow you this way? And is there another leader that you believes what you believe that has enough of a following to actually put something into play?
Well, one of the things that Realign for Palestine and my hope and aspirations are focused on is to try to talk to the silent majority. Believe it or not, what sustains me amidst the suffering, amidst the hardship, and I lost 35 of my immediate and extended family in the current war due to Israeli bombardment, and yet I've chosen the path of healing and reconciliation, are the thousands of Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims that reach out to me and say, thank God someone else is saying what we know is necessary, what we know is what's needed, but we have a hard time saying so publicly. So there is a large contingency of my community in the land and in the diaspora in the United States who are thinking this. The challenge is between the terror regime that we have in Gaza, between the impotent Palestinian Authority that is still nevertheless potentially workable in the West Bank. I'm not really reliant on our leadership. I'm reliant on the next generation of Palestinian peacemakers and nation builders. And that's where I think we have to focus our effort rather than waiting for these old school leaders that have failed our people.
Right.
And
But in practical terms, Hani is dead. The Sinwars are dead. I don't really know too many other Palestinian leaders, but who would go to Qatar and cut a deal to bring an end to the fighting and make sure Hamas was no longer in Gaza? Like, who would be the person? Do you have any idea who that could be?
Well, I think this can happen in phases and stages. I think, unfortunately, there has been no willingness to appreciate that even if for the time being, Hamas in the first phase to get the hostages released, to get the ceasefire going, is going to be in parts of Gaza. There can and should be a vision that is multilateral, that involves the Arab League, that involves the Palestinian Authority, that involves the United States, that involves the youth and the Palestinian and Arab diaspora to actually be part of nation building, to actually set up a transitional council of Arabs and Muslims and Palestinians who, and especially people from Gaza, who can spearhead those efforts.
Because you will have the world, Ahmed, you will have the world willing to, I mean, from the West and the East, pour money if they as long as it's not going to the next terror tunnel into that area, it could be rebuilt. As bad as it is, it could be rebuilt quickly. But people just have to know it's going to the right place to rebuild a society, to create a Palestinian homeland that will be as productive as Jordan or as UAE or anything else in the region. You don't have to say Israel is my best ally, but they clearly can function in a region with Israel. Saudi Arabia can, UAE can, Egypt can, Bahrain can, Oman can, Qatar can. Why can't the Palestinians?
Well, that's where I'm focusing on, in addition to the policy work, I'm focusing on some of the narrative work to try to dispel the myths around, the armed resistance crap, the violence around issues, thorny issues like from the river to the sea, the full right of return. Those things have to be addressed. Because otherwise, what we could face is a scenario in which Gaza is simply reconstructed, rebuilt physically, but it's not, it's like Gaza doesn't just need to be rebuilt. It needs to be reconstituted, rejuvenated, so that it's the pride and joy of the Palestinian people, so that it's a model for effective self-governance, for its overlooking the Mediterranean. It could have connectivity to the Gulf region. It could have an independent economy that's not reliant on the UN and UNRWA and all the aid agencies. Yep. So that's where I think some of this narrative work that I am pushing is just as important. And again, I think actually amidst all the rubble and all the death and destruction and sorrow in Gaza, there is actually a realization that we can never, ever again allow a despicable terror Islamist organization to claim that they're going to squander tens of thousands of lives and tens of billions of dollars in the name of resistance, in the name of liberation.
Right. Ahmed, are they even Palestinians? Are Hamas Palestinians? I mean,
they're pawns in the hands of Qatar, in the hands of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I mean, it was Iran and the IRGC that weaponized Hamas, that weaponized the Palestinian issue in Gaza, that helped turn Gaza into a terror base. And we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of the withdrawal of Israeli settlements in 2005. I left Gaza as a 15-year-old 1 month before the disengagement, the withdrawal in 2005, thinking that I was going to be an exchange student in the United States for 1 year and then go back and be part of rejuvenating and building Gaza. And instead, Hamas slowly took over, and I had to seek political asylum here because of their actions. But the Islamic Republic of Iran was an instrumental part in the building of the tunnels.
Ahmed, Fouad, Alkhatib, thanks so much. I hope everyone listens to you. You seem to make a lot of sense and have a pathway there going forward. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We are back, and Jennifer Say is our guest, CEO of XXXY Athletics, also an author, filmmaker, outstanding business person, and executive, and retired national champion gymnast. Jennifer, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Are you surprised, number one, that this was even an issue? If I told you this was going to be an issue, trans men and women's sports, 10 years ago, what would you have said to me?
Yeah, I would have said you were nuts.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed it. And in fact, I remember having conversations with Nancy Hogshead, who's an Olympic swimmer, Olympic gold medalist from 1984 in like 2017. And she was already on this. And I was like, I don't know.
It's not a big deal.
I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. I get that it's not fair, but it just keeps accelerating. Even since Trump's executive order in February, it's accelerated in blue states. I think we're going to get to the point where in blue states, boys win all the track and field gold medals. That's what we're getting close to.
And could just take a backtrack a little. What does it mean to you? You're a highly successful athlete. Give everybody an idea of your athletic background.
Yeah, I had a pretty unusual childhood. I was a gymnast in the 70s and 80s, 7-time national team member, 1986 national champion. So, competed at the highest levels of the sport, world championships, all of that.
Gymnastics?
Gymnastics, sorry. No, regular. The 4 events, beam, vault, bars, and floor. I was an early whistleblower 20 years later about the abuse in the sport, which is a separate story. I was the very first whistleblower about the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse in the sport. So I'm kind of used to saying true but inconvenient things. But what I always tell people is an athlete of that level, you lose a lot. You lose more than you win. I mean, honestly, we don't all win all the time, except Simone. She wins all the time.
Right.
She went 10 years without losing a competition that she
Simone
entered.
Biles, yeah.
I mean, can you think of another athlete that's done that?
No.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
And you get really good at it, and you build resilience, and you get up when you fall down, and you get up when you lose. But I couldn't accept a fight that wasn't fair. I mean, when I was competing, the Eastern Bloc athletes were using steroids. That was a big deal.
Right.
And we were tested before every competition.
I still remember the Sports Illustrated column with these East German women with backs
Necks.
and necks and like these perfect V's and acne from all the
Of course.
steroids.
Yeah, on the back
Yeah.
knee. Yeah. And so, that would have been difficult, hard to accept. If you don't feel like you have a fair fight in the competition, you want to give up. Why bother? And that's my fear with all of this is all of the gains for women and girls in sports. I think 1,000 times more girls compete in high school sports than they did in 1972 when Title IX passed. There's so many benefits that come with that. If you know it's not fair, if you don't have a fair shot of making the team, possibly winning, you're going to give up and you're not going to do it.
Why bother?
Why bother? So I really see it as an existential threat to women's sports.
So remember, Title IX came into play, and the controversy was if you're going to have men's sports, you got to have just as many women as men. And it was hard to reconfigure, still is, because football has so many people and women don't play football. But they're solving that too, because I think women are going into flag, and I think that could help balance things out. But having said that, that was the debate. I remember doing stories. I used to do all sports with the Women's Sports Foundation over in Eisenhower Park.
Yeah.
And we used to go over there and we used to talk about the balance and women getting the same opportunities. And then we beat that debate and it becomes, okay, I get it now. Let's have equal opportunity and let's try to get the pros balanced down. The women's national soccer team, I was there with 101,000 at the Rose Bowl in 99. Yeah. So I could truly appreciate it. And all of a sudden, women in sports didn't matter anymore. Now we're talking about trans men. How dare you challenge a gender-confused person who wants to go beat women in their sport? I thought, wait a second, didn't we have this argument 30 years ago?
Yeah, I would argue the minute a male breaches the boundary of women's sports, it's not women's sports anymore. I mean, the women's category is basically open now.
Right.
Males who think they're women compete in women's. Women who think they're men compete in women's. Everybody competes in women's. Right. Only men compete in men's. And so, I mean, essentially, women's sports is already done for if we don't fix this. And let's be clear, the more boys that enter, the more boys will win. When boys compete in girls' sports, they win. They do.
I know. I mean, can you imagine playing soccer, field hockey? We've already seen it in field hockey.
Field hockey,
right?
The girl got her teeth knocked out.
Yeah.
By a boy. In volleyball, there have been, Peyton McNabb with a traumatic brain injury from being spiked in the face with a ball. But the fact isn't, this is what their side uses. They say, well, they don't always win, so that means it's fair. No, it doesn't. They still have male advantage. They are still bigger, faster, stronger. Just because they were really crappy male athletes and don't win in women's doesn't mean they don't have unfair advantage. Every male that takes steroids doesn't win the Tour de France. Only Lance Armstrong did. He still had unfair advantage. Every man that took performance-enhancing
the blood
drugs.
doping. So if you take an elite athlete and you cheat, they just become even better.
It's still cheating.
Yeah, no one's saying that you're average and become the best ever. That doesn't happen either.
No, but you get better than you would have been with unfair advantage.
So Jennifer, how do you handle this argument? So I had Jason Crow here, a special forces congressman, Democrat. And I just said, well, the one thing we agree on, right? You don't have trans men and women in sports. And he goes, well, that's a fake issue. It almost never happens. And that's an issue that Donald Trump made up in order to win an election. And that seems to be the Democratic go-to. And you're a former Democrat. Is that a spin you can accept?
No, it's false. That's just a line they use. I don't care how many times you say it. It's still false. This year alone, I think it's about 100 high school male track and field athletes have won. They've been on the podium in women's track and field in high school. That means they're going to get college scholarships in all likelihood if they're winning state competitions.
Right.
And I'll get to the NCAA in a second. So they are stealing team bursts. They're robbing girls of the opportunity to stand atop the podium and celebrate their hard work and their win 100 times this year already. In track and field alone, that's one sport. So that's a lie that it's not happening. And the thing is with the folks that claim that say it's a lie.
Rarely
the
happen.
minute you point it out, they go, well, it's a good thing. It's a triumph for civil rights. So they're all over the place. And then they go to, well, what do you want? You want genital checks? Which is not what would happen. It's a simple cheek swab. One time. It's done. It's less invasive than the drug testing that I endured at every single competition. We had to pee in a cup with someone watching to make sure we weren't taking performance-enhancing drugs. It's less invasive than getting weighed in publicly for wrestling or boxing or all the things. So they go from one argument to the next. It's ridiculous. It's accelerating, unfortunately, since the executive order was signed because the blue states are leaning in. So no, he's wrong. He's incorrect.
So when Gavin Newsom says, it does seem unfair, he doesn't do anything about it. In California, he's getting away as if he's enlightened. He's done nothing.
Well, not only is he not doing anything, he's now working against us. He's suing the federal government to continue to allow athletes like A.B. Hernandez, a boy who won 2 state track and field championships in 2 events. He's suing the federal government to continue to allow that to happen. So he's full of it. He says one thing. He's trying to appear moderate. He doesn't want to take a stand and risk angering the far left. In his state and nationally, but he tries to play both sides. But you got to take a stand here. Have some moral courage and a backbone. Stand up for girls. Why are we're telling, this is the part that bugs me the most, upsets me the most. We are telling these young girls that they don't matter, that their opportunities don't matter. And every time a young girl stands up and says, what about us? She's vilified as a bigot. And so
still, I feel like you're getting the momentum back here, or you're getting it for the first time.
We're getting some momentum, but I'll tell you, I talk to almost every girl that stands up, and what they deal with is pretty brutal. We work with a woman. She's not a high school athlete. She's older. She ran the Boston Marathon in like 2 hours and 45 minutes, really, really fast. She took a stand because Boston allowed males to run in the women's category this year. Her
just
team
felt female that day.
Yeah, exactly. They also have a non-binary category, which guess who wins? Men, every time. She got kicked off her team. Her running club kicked her off. They told her, don't wear your jersey to run with our team, a team she's been on for 10 years. Lost friends. She was stalked and harassed on her running app so people would know where she was on the field to threaten her and yell at her and throw things at her. So that's a pretty tough situation.
Oh my God.
For someone that really I deal with it all the time. Riley deals with it all the time. But when you're new to it, it's pretty brutal.
But do you remember when Riley Gaines was forced in San Francisco, I think it was, was forced into that classroom. Security couldn't get her out. She locked herself, or she was forced to stay in there. Now I feel like she's treated more heroically than she was back then, right?
She absolutely is. Look at what happened with Simone Biles. Simone attacked her on X. And did not expect, I think, the clapback she got. I think Simone lives in a world where everybody agrees with her and everybody tells her she's great and that everything
celebrity world.
Yeah, and everything she says is great. And she's made this sort of offhand comment. She thought she'd get claps and likes, and she got a lot of blowback from women on the left and the right because we support Riley, and 80% of Americans agree that women's sports are for women only. But here's what I'll just tell you, and this is an illustration, I think, of how far we still have to go. Not a single currently competing professional or elite level, Olympic level athlete has spoken out.
Crazy.
So we have a ways.
That you're 100% right about that, and I think we're going to have a huge problem with the Olympics. When they come to Los Angeles with the Olympics, are these men going to try to compete in boxing and other things?
Well, the IOC is pathetic and hasn't, they have a new president, the IOC, a woman named Christy Coventry. She has said in the past that she is for protecting women's sports. She has yet to do anything. The IOC could wave a wand and make it right tomorrow. They could make it right tomorrow.
How would you do that? How do you make it right? Like, what do you judge it on?
You say only XX, you must be XX to compete in the women's category. Men's can be open. Anyone can compete in men's. We're going to do sex testing like we did back in 1999. We ended it with a cheek swab or spit in a cup. You just spit in a cup. It's easy. One time. Then you don't have to do it more than once. You don't have to do it like weigh-ins all the time. You don't have drug testing you have to do all the time. One-time test. But the IOC has not done that yet, and they've sort of batted it to the individual governing bodies. So World Boxing has, which is what was so fraught in the last Olympics, there's a new governing body for boxing. It's called World Boxing, I believe. They have set a new rule to say you must be XX to compete in women's, and we will sex test.
Well, yeah, I guess we're going to see what happens there. So your apparel, this is your business acumen mixing with your athleticism.
That's right.
So XXXY, men's and women's.
Binary. That's it. There's XX, there's XY. That's the truth. Yes, there are chromosomal abnormalities. They are still either male or female.
Right, and there's athletic wear.
It's athletic
right now
wear.
You're wearing, for people that are not watching the stream, you're wearing a sweatsuit, right? Like it's like a tennis outfit.
So let me tell you, this is a special item. So just yesterday, in honor of Title IX, we released what's called a collab in the fashion world with Riley Gaines, our first ever collab. So this jacket, a velour 70s inspired track jacket, velour, is part of the Riley Gaines collection, which is live now. Very limited edition.
That's impressive. Now, what is your apparel background?
I worked at Levi's for 23 years. Before that, I worked at The Gap for 3 years. 30 plus years as an executive. Well, 20 plus as an executive. Marketing, product, e-commerce, lots of things. Mostly marketing. I was the chief marketing officer at Levi's for 8 years, but I was the brand president for 2 overall of product.
Wow. So you have that background, you have this mission, and you merge them both.
I did, and I was part of bringing Levi's back from the brink of bankruptcy in 2011 and taking the company public in 2019 with the IPO. And I feel like my skill is to create content and brands that intersect with culture and move public opinion. I just felt like there's an opportunity here. Not a single big brand is standing up for women's sports, not one.
So you told me too, I saw how we've just mentioned Simone Biles got all this blowback, but you also said that you believe every major brand, if she came out and said, Riley Gaines, you're a hero, I agree with you 100%. Men should play in men's sports, women should play in women's sports. You believe she would have lost all of her endorsements? Even though she got the blowback for saying the opposite.
Well, here, look, I'll speak to her. One of her biggest endorsements, it might be her biggest, is a brand called Athleta. So it's an athletic apparel company
all the time.
Owned by The Gap. It's in San Francisco. I'll just leave it there. That's it. They live in a bubble. I worked there. They were a mile away from Levi's. I know the people that work there. They would have been horrified at the half of the criticism, at the people who would have said you're a bigot, and they would have let her go and ended her contract.
How could a successful female athlete, ever say it's fine with me? Do you know anyone, a successful, active female athlete that actually believes it's okay to be a trans man in women's sports?
Well, a lot are saying it. I mean, Megan Rapinoe is saying it. I don't know her. Yeah, just retired, but I think she would have said it even if she was still competing. I don't understand it, but this is why the language matters. They've got this dumb language in their head that trans women are women. Trans women are men. They have male bodies, but that insidious language has infiltrated the culture, and we have to take it back. They are not women; they are men, and so they think it's bigotry. I mean, it's so misguided and stupid, and I can't even believe we have to have this.
I can't even either. But Jennifer Say making the most of it. She is the CEO of XXXY Athletics, author, filmmaker. When we come back, Jennifer, I'd like to get your take on the economy from the business executive perspective too, and we'll talk more about this. You listen to the Brian Kilmeade Show. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We got a few more minutes. Just talk about the economy for a second. And no, it's not going to be a big, beautiful bill. We got a very successful executive, the CEO of XXXY Athletics, author, filmmaker, business executive, retired national champion gymnast. Also, Jennifer Say worked at Levi's for a while. And prior to that, you worked for?
Gap. But Levi's for 2.5 decades.
So I was talking to somebody that has an apparel company that was making their shirts in Vietnam, and they called panicked. Can you give me an idea what Trump wants to do with Vietnam? What about these trade deals? Have you felt it as you are manufacturing now your own sportswear line?
Yeah, look, it's certainly something we need to pay attention to. We make all of our cotton goods in Peru. We've been okay so far. We do make some performance wear in Vietnam, and we're looking to make more and more in the United States, which is the goal, really. Now, the challenge in terms of production in the United States is we don't have the skills and capability here. You can't find sewing machine operators. We don't have the fabric innovation. We don't have the factories. So it's not a solve overnight, but I'm all for bringing more manufacturing to the United States and doing far less in China. We don't produce anything in China because you can't monitor the factories. You can't enter. You don't know the working conditions. So that's off the table for me.
So tell me about the consumer. Does the consumer feel free to spend? Do you feel
to spend more for
2025? Do you feel as though they feel good about the economy, and when they do, they'll spend?
When they feel optimistic, they'll spend. I think that their key indicators are positive despite the gloom and doom from the mainstream media.
Right.
The S&P, I think, is about to hit an all-time high. Unemployment is low. People feel optimistic, and they do spend money. I know for my company, even if we see goods increase in price a bit, we'll just take a margin hit. We're going to keep our prices the same
that's pretty
and
much
ride
what
it
the
out.
country's been doing with the tariffs. If the money comes in and it costs a little bit more, they're not making the consumer pay at this point.
Right. And brands out of China there's all these fast fashion brands out of China that are selling you $3 T-shirts. You don't want to know the human rights violations. So everybody's screaming and yelling, even the left-wing press, about how the prices for these brands has gone up. Like Temu is one of the brands. Who cares? I don't want people buying that garbage. That
should be the pushback. Are you happy that slaves are making it, that children are doing it, and that the Uyghurs are forced to do it?
Forced
over in China?
labor, exactly.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was great to meet you, Jennifer, in person. Been seeing you on television a lot. Jennifer Say, CEO of XXXY Athletics. Where do we go to order your stuff?
You go to thetruthfits.com.
The Truth Fits. I love it. Jennifer Say, thanks so much. And thank all of you for listening. Keep it here. Brian Kilmeade Show.